It appears that Bernie is back. Now, over the weekend, Senator Sanders, running for the Democratic 2020 nomination, spoke to a crowd of nearly 26,000 people, with other estimates being somewhere up to even 30,000, which is, by the way, the largest number any Democratic presidential candidate has drawn this far, even beating Elizabeth Warren. Now, Elizabeth Warren, her record was about 20,000, which is incredible. So look at the candidates here, right? So you have Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, the two more ostensible progressive candidates in the race. And I know there's a lot of people that would be like, well, no, she's not progressive. She's more progressive than anybody else other than Bernie Sanders in the race, to put that into perspective. So she got still about 20,000 people at her rally, but Bernie Sanders, again, Bernie's rally, 26,000 at least. Progressives for the win. That's all I got to say. Now, he was joined by, of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who made her endorsement official on stage. Also there, Michael Moore, a filmmaker, liberal filmmaker. Of course, he endorsed Bernie Sanders back in 2016. He's absolutely right. And then, of course, you have Nina Turner, head of Our Revolution. I love Nina Turner. She's wonderful. Many, many others. So now, this is Bernie Sanders' comeback rally. And why is it a comeback rally? Well, it's because Bernie Sanders had to take some time off, understandably, from his schedule after having a mild heart attack. So he ended up getting 2 stents after some discomfort, and so took some time off, a little bit of recovery. Again, this guy had a grueling schedule, something that not even someone half his age, could really even keep up with. And so he takes 2 weeks off. He comes back, just like crushes it in the debate, and then holds this massive rally. So now some people were worried about his health. Even people that would support somebody like Bernie Sanders. They're like, I don't know, like that kind of worries us a little bit. And of course, you have establishment media coming out and saying, "Oh my God, heart attack, heart attack, heart attack. He's gonna die while he's in office. The horrible. You shouldn't elect him." Well, no, that's ridiculous, right? Um, and ironically, here's the thing. So this is part of the Bernie Sanders shouldn't be running because he's too old thing, right? So again, there are people out there that do have some legitimate concerns about that, and then there are others who are basically using that as a way to discount Senator Sanders from the race, and that's unfortunately coming from, like I said, a lot of your corporate establishment media, MSNBC, CNN pundits. Um, and what's strange about that is that Joe Biden is about a year younger than Bernie Sanders, and yet you don't see a lot of that discussion. Again, sometimes you will see it among certain supporters or supporters of other younger candidates in the establishment, but generally that's not a overarching media narrative for Joe Biden the way that it's been dominating the discussion on Bernie Sanders. So, but anyway, I think you see Bernie Sanders in the debate first, crushing it, and then you see him in the rally as energetic as ever. Well, then that should allay your concerns because, again, Sanders, sharp as a tack as usual, and full of energy. So now, let's go back to the rally here, right? So now in the rally, he said something interesting, and I love this. He said, quote, of his health, "I am more than ready to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and their apologists, and I am more than ready than ever to create a government based on the principles of justice. To put it bluntly, I am back." I love it. And back with him, of course, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, during her endorsement speech, she pointed out Sanders' record of fighting for the working class, and as part of her, of course, inspiration to run. And that's what's important here. And before I get to the quote, so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, those are the 3 that are endorsing her. Again, AOC has already put her endorsement. Tlaib's Omar as well, and Tlaib is expected to very, very shortly. Those 3, again, Bernie Sanders had their back when they were running for office. And so they, of course, in return, have his back. It was never a question. It was just a question of when. When was that endorsement going to happen? So now, as an example of that, she said, quote, "When I was a child that relied on chips so I could see a doctor, Bernie Sanders fought for a single-payer healthcare system. When federal government decided to discriminate and abandon my queer family and friends, Bernie Sanders was putting his career on the line for us." And there are numerous more examples that she cites in her speech. She said that Sanders' 2016 campaign, quote, "fundamentally changed politics," and that he had pushed Democrats to embrace Medicare for all and reject corporate donations. She added, too, that when it comes to her making her endorsement, and she faced a lot of pressure. Obviously, you had the Camp for Elizabeth Warren that was seeking out her endorsement, as well as the Sanders camp. And then, of course, you have the establishment that also would like her to either not make an endorsement or endorse someone else, which, come on, you don't think that she would actually come out for Klobuchar, would you? Klobuchar. But no, she says of the pressure inside of Congress, quote, "Every trick in the book, psychological and otherwise, is used to get us to abandon the working class." And I think that's a great point. And she's not wrong. Like I said, there is this intense pressure inside of Congress to kind of play by the rules, to not try to rise above your station. If you're a freshman congresswoman, to not be too loud, to not rock the boat, to not do anything that could seem uncivil towards your fellow members of Congress. And AOC, of course, has bucked that. And here's the other thing, right? So now, as far as every establishment candidate that is running, remember they're running on something on a platform of more that we can't really have fundamental change. We can't really do anything more than tweak the rich and corporations. If we do it too much, well, then that's going to be bad for us. And by us, he means, of course, or they mean that the people who take corporate donations. Let me give you an example. Pete Buttigieg is awash in donor money from the health insurance industry, as well as other industries. And it's a good example of why he turned his back on Medicare for all. He was not going to get AOC's endorsement. He was not going to get any progressive endorsement. Kamala Harris, she went on large fundraisers. Joe Biden does so as well. All these candidates are representations of the establishment and the corporate sector. They will not serve our economic needs. And let's be honest, this is not a race against who can be more socially liberal, right? I think a lot of these candidates are actually really, really great on social issues. For example, Cory Booker's good on criminal justice. Kamala Harris, she's actually great on reproductive rights, understandably. But those are the social issues. What this election is about who can stand up and fight for progressive economic ideas. And so that's really difficult because when it comes to social issues, right? Well, there's not a lot of giant money that is opposing things like gay marriage. Now, there is money there, and it comes from, of course, religious groups and large, large groups like that, large conservative groups. But as far as large corporate money, corporate donations, other than Chick-fil-A, right, you don't really have this massive amount of money that is against these social issues. Now, when it comes to economic issues, well, then, of course, you have giant amounts of corporate money that are pushing back against raising the minimum wage, for example, or taxing the rich and corporations at a higher rate or a higher marginal rate, or doing things like, for example, Medicare for all and free college. You have these large interests that are arrayed against doing those progressive policies because it ends up costing them money, costing them profit. And so it is much, much harder to go against that system and the armies of lobbyists that these corporations hired to go on Capitol Hill. And so Now, AOC's endorsement, like I said, as well as Ilhan Omar's, super, super important, and Rashida Tlaib, they're important because, for one, these women are amazing. They have a huge following. AOC's has the largest following of them all, uh, and not only about the following, how they could reach out to people, but also I think they are the most representative of what the progressive movement really is. It's not people that look like me. Okay, it is young people, diverse, and more than and they're more than willing to stand up and do the right thing. They are willing to challenge power because, look, for most of U.S. history, these same people are the ones who didn't have that power. And so, yes, they are rising up and they're taking on the powerful, and I absolutely love them for it. So now, let me go to Rebecca Katz, who's a progressive consultant who advised Cynthia Nixon's 2018 campaign in New York. So very progressive. She said, quote, on the AOC endorsement and the squad endorsement, there are a few more notable endorsements on the Democratic side than AOC's. It's a real shot in the arm for Bernie and helps energize the base. Absolutely. Adding to this, 3 state senators from New York, Mike Gianaris, Jessica Ramos, and Luis Sepulveda, revealed on Saturday that they are also supporting Bernie Sanders as well. But back to AOC. Faiz Shakir, Sanders' campaign manager, tells Politico, quote, she has broad approval across the Democratic Party. People really find her compelling in how she talks about the issues. She extends Bernie Sanders' argument and reaches many of these same people with her core message, but her background and language may make her able to reach additional people. Now, there are people out there that love Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but don't as much like Bernie Sanders. I always found that really, really strange and kind of laughable. Like, wait, AOC was inspired by Bernie Sanders. AOC, more importantly, was supported in her campaign by Bernie Sanders. And so their campaigns worked very closely with each other. And then when, of course, she ended up winning her race, she went around to help these other progressives. You know why? It's because progressives stick together and they get things done. You can't really say that about anyone else. Now, one more. This is Representative Ilhan Omar, right? So now, she also said this week that she was endorsing Bernie Sanders. I showed you guys that video. Then you had Rashida Tlaib. Now, let me go to Nina Turner, right? This is a quote from her about that. Quote, they are a symbol of the diversity the senator has always had, but not gotten credit for. That's really important. And let me give you another quote here. This is from Michael Moore during that same speech. He said, quote, the only heart attack we should be talking about is the one Wall Street is going to have when Bernie Sanders is president. I love it. Now, one more thing here. No, so I understand worrying about a candidate's health, but as I mentioned before, if you watched him in the debate, if you watched him at the rally on Saturday, I think it's pretty clear that Bernie Sanders is stronger than ever and ready to get back to challenging the establishment as well as working for us. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.